You're listening to the Joel Martin Mastery Podcast, home of the 2-hour deep dive interview with gold, platinum, and multi-platinum bands, including Stained, Blue Rodeo, The Arkells, Finger 11, Big Wreck, Moist, Bedouin Soundclash, I Mother Earth, Ill Scarlet, Neverending White Lights, Thornley, and many more. Please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast, as well as share, comment, and like. Now let's dive in to today's episode. Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of the podcast. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. We are joined by a very special guest. He's achieved a level of mastery as a singer-songwriter and as one of the guitarists in the multi-platinum band Big Wreck. So welcome to the podcast, Chris Caddell. Chris, how are you, and how good does it feel to have released the third and final EP with Big Wreck? This is a project that started all the way back in 2020.
Yeah, well, I mean, it feels great. It's been, just putting it out, 3 little EPs. It's good to sink our teeth into the new one, the new stuff. I think the third one's probably my favorite personally, just for songs and stuff like that. I think it's really great. So yeah, it's fun to play the stuff. It's been hiding for a while.
Yeah. So the 15 songs were recorded up front together, and it's just the delivery method that you chose you've ended up releasing them in 5-song chunks with the EPs. Is that correct?
Yeah, basically, people don't generally listen to an entire 15-song album. So it was just kind of, why don't we just put, 5 songs out at a time and, go from there.
Awesome.
I think it worked because I agree. I don't really listen to full albums as much anymore. And, other than the classics really, but, 5 songs at a time, it's just nice little bag of chips. They always taste better.
Yeah, I've been following this journey over the 16 months from when 7.1 was released all the way to in the last week or two when 7.3 was released. And I feel like when you release a 15-song album up front, it's like there's a buzz with a single or two for a few months, and then it kind of dies off. And 2 years later, it's like, well, we haven't heard from Big Wreck in a while. And with the EPs, it's like every 7 months or 8 months or however long it was between EPs, it's like there's new music from Big Wreck, and there's a new single, and there's a second single, and just by the time the second single is fading, there's a new EP with a new single, and it feels like it was a success. Is that how you guys feel?
I think so. I'm not really involved in a lot of that sort of stuff, but it feels like it's lingered on longer than any other record that I've been, around for and stuff like that. It feels like the whole thing has been enjoyed, I think.
Awesome. So we're going to do a full 2-hour deep dive. We're going to go from the very beginning. We're going to go over your life, your career, your discography. We're going to make our way all the way to Big Wreck and the new EPs, but there's a long journey that led to that. So we'll start all the way at the beginning. And
you calling me old?
No, I'm saying you're not an overnight success is what I'm saying. You can take that however you want.
That's for sure.
But I like to start these interviews by sharing with our listeners how the guests and I ended up here today. So in the music industry, it's all about networking and relationships and building community. So in our case, just a few episodes ago on episode number 93, I had our mutual friend, Tony Rabelow, from Joy Drop back in the day and from Bedouin Soundclash. Currently, he's out on tour and they have a new album. After an interview, I asked the guests, can you think of anyone that would make for a great guest in the future? And there was only one name that left his lips. He said, you need Chris Caddell from Big Wreck. And he put us in touch. And within like a couple days, we ended up scheduling this interview. So it was very fast. Yeah. That's how we ended up here today. And I wanted to start this off powerfully. So there's only one way to do that correctly. So I reached out to Tony and I got some kind words. So here are some kind words from Tony. And
this is rare.
Yeah, he must like you because he sent in quite a bit. So sit tight here. This is what Tony has to say. He says, Chris Caddell and I met around 18 years ago at our favorite bar, the Orbit Room. We got to know each other there, playing music together or just hanging out with friends and fellow musicians late into the night. Some of my best hangovers were from those greasy but awesome hangs. Our
Yep.
friendship grew there over time and a mutual respect, so much so that to this day we affectionately refer to each other as fucking CC and fucking Rabs. He was pretty new to the Toronto music scene in those days, but I watched him quickly gain the respect of fellow musicians with his badass guitar playing, singing, and just for being an all-around solid guy with a quick wit and a dry sense of humor. I knew then that this wild-haired guitar slaying dude was going to be an on-demand musician playing with some of the most well-established acts in the land, and that's exactly what he's been doing. He's a good friend, and it's always a blast when we get together over a pint, sharing a stage or crossing paths in our musical journeys. Slay on, play on, brother. So that's from Tony.
Jeez, he's gonna make me cry. He never says that stuff.
There you go. So
Tony's the best. Yeah, we met a long time ago, and it was kind of an instant. Sometimes you meet people that you just, oh, we're gonna be buds, and that happened right away with us. And he's just a great guy, great musician, killer songwriter. I love his solo stuff. It's really amazing. Yeah, Tony's the best.
Yeah, when I was in my mid-20s, I moved from Ottawa to the GTA, and I was there for 11 years. I moved back to Ottawa a couple of years ago during the pandemic. And so when I was 25 and I ended up in the GTA, I started looking for open mics, and I found his famous Free Fall Sunday open mics, and that's how I know him from way back then. And the open mics were great, and him and Steve York were great hosts, very inviting. And that's how far back we go. So speaking of going far back, let's take it all the way back to the beginning with you. So people look at you today, you're playing with Big Wreck, this beloved Canadian band, multi-platinum, new albums, big tours, all this stuff. So they see this rock star, up on stage, but it didn't start like that. So let's go all the way to the beginning. Where does this love of music come from? Is there an earliest musical memory that jumps out at you today when you think back?
It's always been my dad. My dad plays guitar and sings, and he's always just had a guitar around, and he'd be singing songs. I think my earliest sort of thing is like being a tiny little kid in the bathtub, and my dad sitting on the toilet singing songs in the bathroom while I was taking a bath, and I'd always be like, "Dad, come on, sing songs." And him and his friends, they call themselves the Four Aces, and they never really played any gigs or anything like that, but like all long weekends, all of our families would get together. It was more of my family growing up than actual family. It was the Aces kind of hangs on long weekends and stuff like that every time. And they just sit in the living room and play music and, have my toys and sneak in and, just loved it. I just, and they'd just be laughing the whole time. And, it was just a great time. So growing up, I had a lot of that, but I didn't necessarily start very early. I didn't really get into playing guitar and music until about high school. I was, dead set on being in the NHL, as any typical Canadian kid is. So it was, I started a little bit later, but I think my love for music was very early on.
Can you remember some of the songs that your dad played back then? Was it any originals or cover songs? Can you remember?
It was always covers. I always loved I don't know who they're by, but like Dream in My Dreams. I'll always miss dreaming my dreams with you. I don't know who that is, but they'd always sing that one, like a Rolling Stone. My stepmom calls their set list all the dreamy unknowns. They're big ballad guys.
That's
but not
funny.
like hits. It's like they're kind of deep cuts and singer-songwritery sort of stuff, but it was really cool. Lots of like Van Morrison and stuff like that.
So you started just as a lover of music, just hearing your dad play music, his friends, and then you said in high school you started to play yourself. What was the catalyst that led you to actually pick up an instrument and not just be an outsider enjoying music?
Well, when I got to high school, my stepmom was the music teacher there, and she would run these concerts at lunchtime and like at the end, and my dad was kind of running the sound because I think he was the only one that really knew how to do it. So I just kind of ended up helping out with that sort of thing, and seeing kids your own age up on stage singing songs and playing guitar, I was just like, wow, I could do that. That just kind of fascinated me at that point. And, I just I dug right into it right away and, caught the bug and wanted to do that sort of stuff.
And did your dad help teach you a little on guitar? Did you take lessons or you self-taught?
Yeah. He would help me whenever he could. Like he, he's a strummer. He's more of a, just mostly singing, and guitar kind of accompanies him. And, he'd help me out with chords and stuff like that. We both took lessons from another teacher at the school for a little while, and that helped out a bit. And then I mostly learned early on anyway, just from like Guitar World. You just pick up the magazine and read the tab. I just figured out how to read tab, which is not, it's really easy to figure out. But I had enough kind of like regular musical background that I knew what notes and dotted notes and stuff like that were, but I can't read that sort of stuff, but I can do tabs and then look at the lines and dots and figure out what's going on. So
it's funny, you and I back in the day, we learned with guitar tabs, which were awesome. And now
yeah.
today it's like there's apps that can slow down the music. You see every note,
Oh,
you
yeah.
can loop things. There's apps and software. There's YouTube tutorials. Like it's such a cool world now today for someone to
it's so different. I remember when CDs came around and you could just skip right to a song. That was like mind-boggling, or just put it on repeat and be able to, like, that was game-changing for me learning songs back then. You just have to rewind it a little bit and figure out the part. Like, you just had to figure it out. There was no, and especially the stuff like I see the Big Sugar poster in your background. Like, I love Big Sugar, and how I would learn some of their stuff would just go to the show and watch intently and be like, okay, well, if I see him strum without his left hand on, I know he's in an open tuning, and he's usually in G. And then I just try to see, oh, he's up there, and blah, blah, blah. And then, go home and after the show and, rest my ears a bit, but, just try to figure it out like that. Because you wouldn't find nobody would be tabbing Big Sugar stuff or Big Rec stuff back in that day. Like, you just had to figure it out.
And at the age where you got obsessed with guitar and you were really practicing and you had Guitar World and checking out the tabs, who would you say were your biggest guitar influences? Were there some, guitarists out there that you were like, man, that's my dude?
Oh, it was Steve Ray Vaughan and Jimi Hendrix. It was basically whatever the Belleville HMV blues section had, which was about, this long. So it was like you could get Albert King, BB King, Eric Clapton, Stevie Ray Vaughan, and there'd be like Robert Johnson as well, which I didn't really get into until a lot later. But yeah, those were kind of my go-tos. And my dad was into Dire Straits a lot, and I love that sort of stuff too. Mark Knopfler's probably my favorite right now.
You've got Dire Straits behind you on the shelf.
Yeah,
the Dire.
Yeah, I got the songbook recently. I love it. He does some like different chords that kind of I need a little help with, so it's nice to have it.
You mentioned the Belleville HMV had a very small blues section, but all the ones you mentioned, at least they had like the greatest artists of all time there, right?
Yeah, it was, but you couldn't really do a deep dive. Like, if I really wanted to get like an Albert Collins CD or something like that, you'd have to order it, and I didn't have time for that sort of stuff.
So you started on guitar, and then where did vocals and songwriting come into play? Quite a few years later, or right away?
I guess I started playing guitar, and then I was kind of in bands around 14, and it was all kind of punk. And another friend of mine, Scott Berger, was playing bass, and he was doing the singing. And then I just wanted to play blues songs, so I kind of had to, like, there wasn't just somebody who wanted to sing blues songs and then hang out for however long while we solo sort of thing, you know? So it was like, well, I'm going to have to do this myself. And I think it was my 16th birthday. My dad got me a used SM58. And I remember being like, oh, that's kind of a bummer present, but I still have it. Like
Those things last forever, right?
Yeah, that's probably the best present I've ever gotten. And you know, so I just kind of I fell into it just because I kind of had to, and then you know, I've really grown to love it a lot.
I remember growing up, so I started on guitar, and then I saved. I'm you know, I started at 8 or something, so I'm really young, and I saved up all summer to buy a mic, an XLR cable, and a mic stand. And I finally bought it. I sat down and I realized I couldn't play guitar and sing at the same time, and I was so heartbroken. I didn't know that would be an issue before, you know. So I wanted to bring it back, but I didn't, and eventually, you know, I was able to do it. Did you ever have any trouble with the two together, or?
I don't think so. I mean, for more complicated stuff, it takes a little more practice. But I remember faking sick one day from school so I could, because my dad had like amps and stuff around, and there was a microphone and a cable. I just plugged into like an amp, and then I just you know, wrote out the lyrics to a couple Silverchair songs and figured them out, and then I just sang them all day long. And I you know, I couldn't be stopped until I figured it out. It would just bug me, you know. So I don't remember it being very difficult, but you know, certain things, even to this day, it's like, you know, if you have to do something really complicated while singing, is, you know, you just got to work it out. It's a way of just kind of placing everything in a spot. You know,
You mentioned playing in different bands growing up. Our listeners love to hear the names of the bands that people were in earlier in their careers. Can you remember the band names? Any ridiculous ones? Any awesome ones? Any embarrassing ones?
The most ridiculous one was it was with my buddy Scott Berger and Shannon Crawford. He was the drummer, and we didn't have a band name yet, and he, I don't know what really happened, but he was like dehydrated or something, and he fainted in the middle of class, and people thought he had a seizure or something like that. So we named the band Seizure after that. And
that's not a bad name.
It was all right, but it was like, you know, pretty stupid. And then the first blues band was Slow Hand Blues Band, after like some Eric Clapton stuff. And then we were Chris Caddell and the Discount Orchestra, because we were only a 3-piece. And then I think that's it. Our cover band, Stifler's Mom. That was a good one.
That's the best name so far, I think.
Yeah. And then Horseshack, after Arnold Horseshack. Welcome Back, Cotter is our current cover band name. So like I said, I know I always take it lightly.
When you think back to your childhood, what memories come to mind? You mentioned wanting to play in the NHL, so hockey was a big part of your childhood.
Oh, big time. Yeah, I still play it. You know, I just love it. It's kind of my, you know, being a musician, you can't really turn off music. You know, everywhere you go, it's there. And you know, I find that I need a break from it sometimes, and the best thing for me is just playing hockey and going out and stopping some pucks and just get away from everything. It's just fun for me.
What's funny is yesterday we were texting. I was actually in the dressing room about to get on the ice, and you mentioned like, oh, I'm a goalie, and I sent a picture of my pad. So we're not only are we both goalies, which is rare, but we both catch the other way, which is super rare. So exactly. we have a few things in common. If I were to ask you as a kid what you wanted to be when you grew up, so this is probably before the dream of music, what would you have said you wanted to be? So probably again NHL goalie. Anything else?
Oh yeah, no, that was it. And then when I got to music, it was just music. I almost went to I got accepted for it, but I wanted to be on Sports Center, so I almost went for radio and television broadcasting at Loyalist. But last minute, I was just like, I'll just give this music thing a go, and I guess it worked out.
Well, You had two dreams of playing in the NHL and being a rock star, and you accomplished one of them, which is more than most people can say from their childhood dreams. So there you go. How much do you think growing up in Belleville, Ontario, for our international listeners, Ontario, Canada,
Mm.
how much do you think growing up in Belleville shaped you as a musician and also as a person?
Um, well, there was a great music scene. Like when I was growing up in Belleville, there was a ton of really good bands and a lot of really good guitar players. I remember when I first got to high school, Jeremy Kelly was a guy that was just amazing. Another guy, Darcy Hammerton, was really great. Stephen McDonald, Kurt Broadbridge, or Clifton David, he goes by now, um, and everybody was super nice. So it was, everybody's really supportive. I had a great guitar teacher once I, started to figure things out and, wanted to just learn more than just kind of paint by numbers guitar. His name was Tim Campbell, and he was, he just took me under his wing, and he noticed that I would come back the next week and worked on all the stuff that we were talking about and stuff like that. So he was, very generous at like keeping me afterwards, and I'd pay for a half hour, and we'd go 2 hours sometimes at the end of his day, sort of thing. So he was really great about that. And yeah, like at the time, I worked at a music store, Pinnacle Music Studios. It was like a studio as well, and Ken and Janet Harnden that ran that at the time. And I had a lot of, they'd have these bands that would be doing these big shows, and they'd be rehearsing around, and I'd just kind of hang out and stick by the guitar player and pick up whatever I could. So it was very, very rich, music scene in Belleville at the time, which was really cool for me to be a part of.
In my early 20s, I was in a 4-year relationship with someone whose grandma lived in Belleville. So every few months, we would do a mini road trip from Ottawa to Belleville. And the highlight was always going to Reed's Dairy. It was Reed's Dairy there when you were growing up.
Oh, yeah. I grew up on their ice cream. And then when they came out with the Looney and Toonie shakes, it was a
game changer. Yeah.
Oh, it was awesome. It's the best shake anywhere, for sure.
Yeah. I haven't stopped in since then, so it's been a hot minute. But now
I'm not sure if they're still Looney and Toonie shakes. That'd be awesome.
A little bit of inflation. Inflation since then, it's like a $7 shake, I would think.
Yeah. But Looney-ish and Toonie-ish shakes.
yeah, multiple Loonies and multiple Toonie shakes. Mm-hmm. If you and I were friends at 16 and you invited me over to your place to listen to music, what albums would you be spinning at 16?
That'd be like Steve Ray Vaughan and stuff like that. I bought all of his records at one time, and I think there's about 4 that I would keep in the my 5-disc player sort of thing, and then the other one would be, I think I got. I really liked Zakk Wylde, Ozzy's No More Tears, that sort of stuff. Trying to think of what else. Yeah, I was really dead set on the blues at that time. And when I was 16, it was blues or nothing, which was stupid.
I picked up tickets for Metallica's upcoming tour. I'm going to Montreal. So it's
oh, nice.
2 different days, 2 different sets, different bands each day. Like, it's 2 completely different things. And one of the days it's the new formation of Pantera that's opening. So I'll be seeing Zakk Wylde, who is
awesome,
doing the difficult duty of replacing Dimebag for a tour. But if someone could do it, it would be Zakk Wylde, I would think. So
my fiance got tickets for Pantera this summer. I was supposed to go with her, but I can't book leisure activities in the summertime. It's just a gig always comes up. So unfortunately I have to miss it, but I'd love to see that. That'd be awesome. I think that's cool. He's the perfect guy for that.
Yeah, I mean, they've already played a bunch of shows as Pantera, and you could watch the videos online, and there's good quality concert footage, and dude, it sounds like Pantera. Like they got the sound down and kind of the swampiness and all that stuff.
Yeah, I'd be pumped to see it. That'd be awesome.
What are some of the jobs that you had leading up to becoming a professional musician? Our listeners love to hear that the guest is actually human. Like they worked in like a butcher shop, or they took out garbages at the back of a fast food restaurant. They love to hear that stuff. Any regular person jobs leading up to?
Oh yeah, I had a couple of cool ones. I started out just, everybody had a paper route, so I did that, and then I started mowing lawns. Like my grandparents had a kind of a big property just outside of Belleville, so that was kind of my regular once a week sort of thing. I was really busy with hockey and stuff, so I couldn't really get a real job at the time. And then when that slowed down, I worked at the hockey rinks. I was the guy shoveling snow after the Zamboni went off the ice and sweeping dressing rooms. And then I got a job at Dewey's Independent Grocer. I was in the dairy section, did that for a while. And then I randomly got into repairing shoes for Money's Worth and Best in Belleville. And it was a guy in Kingston. I was playing in Kingston a lot, and he would come to the jams and he's like, we're looking for workers, and musicians are great because, you can just kind of figure stuff out, and it's always, just learning how to do it. And it was a pretty cool job. I did it for a couple of years, and, just putting lifts on shoes and changing Birkenstock soles. And
is that a skill that you still have today?
If I had the tools, I could probably still do it. There was a big machine that we had that, for grinding stuff, and yeah, I'd probably still be able to put some soles on some cowboy boots if I needed to. If I had the right stuff.
My biggest question about working at the arena is, did you ever get to drive the Zamboni?
I got to take a lap. I did not resurface the ice, but I begged the other guy to, just let me just go around once. Like, I don't put the thing down. And he's like, don't tell anybody about this. So that was 20 years. He's probably long gone.
Yeah. Hopefully, there are no repercussions for you sharing that info now 20 years later.
I'm sure it'll be fine.
Yeah. How early on did you know you had something special to offer as a guitarist and as a musician? And where did the idea first come into your mind that, hey, this is, if I work at my craft, that I could maybe do this as a living?
I guess when we were, we played a lot in Belleville. Like, there was a lot of gigs to be played. There was a place called the Bohemian Penguin that would have us all the time. And we got some opening slots, like opening for Kim Mitchell, Alana Miles, Widemouth Mason. We did our Waterfront Festival a few times, and another place called Copperfields that we played in. We were busy, like, almost every weekend from about, I guess, when I was about 18 to 20. And then I just kind of thought, okay, well, it's working here. I'm going to have to go, where the real players are. And that's when I was, a couple of my friends had gone to Humber, and I'm like, I can't read music. So, and, I didn't really feel like that was the right path for me. I kind of wish I did, just for some, little theory things and, stuff that I probably should have learned back then, which, I still do it now, I'm not really a big jazz guy, so I didn't really want to do that. And then they needed a roommate. So they were going to Humber, and they were like, why don't you just, he called me up at the shoe shop. I was at the shoe repair shop, and he's like, we need a roommate. What do you feel about moving to Toronto in, I think it was August or something like that, maybe July? I was like, yeah, let's do it. So I just quit and up and left. And, then you get to Toronto, and then you see, better and better players, and there's tons of great musicians around, and you go to jams and meet people. And next thing you know, you're doing the same thing in Toronto, which was really cool.
Yeah, when you're in Canada, if you want to give yourself a serious chance of having a career as a musician, you're normally looking to move to Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, the major music markets. I know as a musician from Ottawa myself, for years it was always like I got to get to Toronto, and eventually at 25 I did get there for about a decade. So it was the same
Yeah.
with you, right? You felt like I got to
Yeah.
get from Belleville to Toronto if I'm serious.
Yeah, definitely. It it just felt like the right thing to do. And I knew that, a lot of people were uh my friends that were at Humber and stuff like that, they were getting opportunities, and um I guess I just kind of tagged along with them for a lot of stuff. And you know and then it's not who you know, it's who you drink with.
There you go. So I've one final question about growing up, and then we'll dive into your solo career with the Wreckage.
uh,
Musicians are usually told, look, you got to get a good education, you got to get a good job, having a career in the music industry, man, that's a pipe dream. It's one in a million. Did you ever deal with that kind of resistance from friends or family? And if so, how did you overcome that to go on to have a successful career in music?
uh my mom wasn't thrilled about me not going to school when I didn't go to Loyalist for that thing. But I was just kind of like, you know what, that's going to take up so much of my time. Like, that's not what I really want to do. And to have something to fall back on, I felt eventually I will fall back on it. So it was kind of just either jump in the pool or don't. There's a lot of like kind of, guys in Belleville that had tried to do it, and then they ended up coming back in a year. And some of those guys are like, yeah, well, we'll see, moving to Toronto, yeah, well, we'll see in a year. And I was like, okay, well, we'll see. I didn't really, it was never really a fear to me, though. I guess I was kind of like, well, I was determined to do it somehow.
So let's dive into the solo stuff. So Chris Caddell and the Wreckage. Where did the idea of forming the Wreckage come from, and where did the idea for the name come from? And it just hit me now. It's like I've been doing all this research and listening to your entire discography, the solo stuff, the Big Wreck stuff. It just hit me now that the solo stuff is the Wreckage, and then there's Big Wreck. Like it's just
Yeah,
that's awesome. It's
long.
just the wreck, Yeah.
And Ian actually co-wrote one of the songs on my first record. He was there for a bit of the recording of it. That was basically our cover band, Stifler's Mom. At least the bass player Derek Brady and Eric Paul, and then I did all the guitars. I did some of the bass, and even I think we ended up using my drums on "Killing Me." Just an electronic kit in a writing studio, but Casey, the producer, just kind of beefed it up, and it's like, oh, it just sounds good. So like, I can't believe I played drums on my stupid album. But yeah, the name Wreckage came from we were writing with why am I'm not having a brain fart about his name.
That's all good.
Anyway,
that's all good. It'll come back
yeah.
to you. You said Casey. Casey was producing. Which Casey is that?
Casey Marshall. He produced and co-wrote all the tracks with me and another songwriter from Hamilton. And he just had this title. He's like, From the Wreckage, and both of us were just like, that's awesome. That's gonna be the name, Chris Caddell and the Wreckage, because it was kind of like a mashup. Like, it was a wreckage of people. Like, and whenever I had to do a original gig, it's, everybody that I kind of played with in the Toronto area, they're all, they play with tons of different bands. Like, it's kind of like everybody. So it wasn't a set, group of people. It was a collective. Tony played with us a few times, and, it's whoever you can kind of get at the time. So that was more.
So he
it
said,
was kind of a funny.
He said from the Wreckage. So there's a song from the Wreckage. So was it?
Yeah, that was the song that we.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just had a riff. I just had that riff going, and he just like started rhyming off these lyrics. And I'm like, this is perfect. Like, we just hit record, and it was. I think we were about halfway done the record, and we had gotten a little bit of interest from an entertainment lawyer, Chris Taylor, and he's
the entertainment lawyer.
Yeah, no, he was awesome. He was really really backed us a lot, or backed me up a lot, and Casey, and he was like, well, are you still writing? And we're like, yeah, we got a couple more songs. He was just ready to shop with the first 5, and then he's just like, well, keep going and see what you get. And so it was from a second batch, and when he heard that, he was like, okay, like we have to find somewhere for you, sort of thing. And that's another story together.
Yeah. Chris Taylor, that isn't that like Last Gang Records? Is that Chris Taylor? And
it was before that, I think. Okay, he just started it.
I think he had a lot to do with like Nelly Furtado's career and like Metric and
Drake even.
Drake. Okay, I didn't know that. I think Death from Above, 1979, had something to do with him as well. So
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a good person to have as a champion in your corner. That's for sure.
Yeah, he was pretty awesome, and he got me signed to a label called Tiny Ogre in the States, which was a branch from Sony, and had big aspirations. It was awesome. They got me a manager, and then about a year and a half later, the whole label got dropped by Sony. So I just had this record that was just now 3 years old and nothing to do with it. Like I own it again, but what do you do? So I kind of crushed my hopes about being an artist, I guess.
Yeah, man, the music industry is so tough. Even if, I'm going on 100 of these interviews, and you hear the stories across all of them, just the horror stories and things that are unlucky and people leaving this label or this label going bankrupt, or it's crazy because it's like you have a great album and it's like the album hasn't changed. It's still the same great album, and it's just the business side where the label got dropped or it falls apart, and it's like the music is still there. There's just no money machine behind it doing its job.
Yeah, exactly. And it's tough to be an independent, and I've never made any money being an artist, so it's I've been very lucky to be a sideman and have cover bands on the side and do that sort of, still always doing music, which is, knock on wood, that's been pretty great. But yeah, that kind of crushed my dreams about being an artist.
So we have some really loyal listeners for the podcast that they listen to every episode regardless of who the guests are. So for those that aren't the Chris Caddell fans or the Wreckage or Big Wreck, if they're here tuning in, how do you describe your solo music?
It's bluesy, but I try to not make it too bluesy, I guess. Like I like to incorporate a lot of slide. I tend to use open tunings and stuff like that just because it helps me personally with like the creative, songwriting and stuff like that. You can do D, C, G. You do it in open tuning, it sounds like a whole fresh new set of chords. You know what I mean? I love that sort of stuff. So my second record became more kind of a singer-songwriter-y sort of thing. And my first record is more rockin', but there's still lots of bluesy influences, and it gets heavy, but it's also kind of light as well. It's hard to describe, and I hate it when artists do that, but you get asked that.
Yeah, just go listen to it. Like, why are you asking me what it sounds like? Just go listen to
it. Yeah, it's a rock fantasia. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's a great mix of blues and rock. So it's like cool. It's got an edge to it. So it's like it's like heavier than just blues, and then instead of being just really heavy, it's like there's this blues influence and melody and cool guitar riffs and
yeah. I've always kind of I've been a mixture of Steve Ray Vaughan and Zakk Wylde kind of my whole life. That's kind of been my big things, and I was a huge Big Wreck fan back in the day too. It was I love stuff like that. I love it when it gets heavy, and like when you listen to Ian's playing, it's like he's the heaviest shredder 1 minute, and then he's like Mark Knopfler the next, and I just love that stuff.
So when we scheduled this interview, I put out the bat signal to your fans, to the Big Rec fans for questions, and they came in droves. So I'm going to sprinkle in fan questions throughout the rest of this interview. And here's the first question. So this is from Chris Allen from the Big Rec fan group on Facebook. There's like almost 10,000 people in there. And Chris asks, can fans of the Caddell Show on Tuesdays expect a new episode in 2023?
We've always been toying with doing another one. That was kind of a fun, people don't know that it was a fun pandemic thing that we did just to kill some time and make a little extra money. And, it was a lot of fun to kind of host a show, and, everybody's doing online stuff like concerts. And I kind of felt like it was, it'd be more fun to, what if we just did it like a late night sort of talk show sort of thing, and we'd have segments and do other stuff. So, but when you got busy again, there's not really a lot of time. It was a lot of work, as you've been doing podcasts and stuff. It's like, it's not just sitting down and talking to somebody. There's a lot behind the scenes that goes on. It's so maybe the answer is maybe. I'd really like to do it like live, like a live show, and have the band to do songs instead of me just kind of singing with an acoustic guitar and, do some leads and stuff like that. That'd be fun. But maybe, yes.
What I'm getting out of this is, so you're saying there's a chance.
There is a chance. Yeah. We have talked about it a lot, and it just hasn't made sense yet, but I'd love to do it again. That was a lot of fun.
So let's dive into the two solo albums. So you released a self-titled debut album in 2009. My favorite songs are From the Wreckage, Going My Own Way, and the cover of People Get Ready. When you think back to that debut album, what thoughts, memories, emotions come to you? That's the album that kind of kickstarted everything that's happened since then, the adventure that you've been on since 2009.
Yeah. Like, what do I think of when I think of that record?
Yeah. So, I mean, you mentioned that there is kind of the heartbreak of you getting signed, and then the label gets dropped. So there's that. But what else, when you think back to that time, are there good memories? Are there certain feelings about it? Are there, stories, anything about that album?
Well, Casey and I just kind of, he was I played in his band for a couple of his shows and stuff like that, and we were in kind of the same friend group, like he's friends with Ian and stuff like that. So he saw me playing with our Stifler's Mom cover band at I think we were at the Underground, and then afterwards he's like, why don't you do any original stuff? And I'm like, well, I don't know, I don't really have a way to do it. And he's like, let's just write some songs. And I think we did, I think it was Killing Me and Through My Hands were the first two songs that we wrote. And I just remember getting really pumped up about it. I was like, I've always wanted to do a record, but I didn't have the time, or just didn't have the, I don't love songwriting. It's kind of terrifying to me. Like you're just putting your heart on the line basically. And, people take it however they do, whether it's right or wrong. And, that's, so it was kind of cool to have somebody else there and be like, that's more Casey than me, even if it was more me than Casey sort of thing. So it was a lot of fun. And then we got some like success. Like, it was a crazy time in my life, like, turning 30, we entered in a contest and ended up winning it and getting to open for Bon Jovi and Kid Rock at the Sky Dome. And then, at that time I got the gig with, actually was asked to join Thornley at the time. So I had that, and I was just started playing with Colin James as well. So it was just like a whirlwind of like, okay, I'm like reaching peak sideman status, and I got this record in the can. So like, what am I gonna do? And I guess just looking back at it, it was a pretty crazy time. And I was really super busy, and we're trying to write. Any day I had off, we're going to the studio. The EMI studio was available to us because Casey was a writer for them, and we'd do it in my basement. We'd go to his house. We'd go to I think we recorded some of the drums in Eric's living room. It was, that was part of the whole Wreckage name and experience. It was very whenever we could, whatever we could. There was no like, oh, we're going in to do an album. It was like we just did a song at a time when we wrote it, and get it sounding good whenever we could. So it was interesting. My first record too, so it's like, not how I expected or envisioned it, I guess, but it was really cool. And when it finally got done, it was pretty sweet relief.
You mentioned that you got offered to join Thornley, and I have a quote here from someone that did end up joining Thornley. So this is from Tavis Stanley. So he's Art of Dying, Adelita's Way, Thornley, and he's currently on tour with Saint Asonia. So Mike from Stains.
Well, Tavis was in Stifler's Mom as well.
Okay, so there's the connection that goes even further back. So Mike, the guitarist in Saint Asonia, is also in Stained, and Stained just put out their first new single in a decade, and they're on tour with Godsmack. So I think the conflict of interest. Mike is back with Stained for a bit, and Tavis has been on tour with Saint Asonia. So Tavis says Chris Caddell is one of the most talented singers and guitarists I've ever met. It was always a pleasure to play with him, and he'll always be one of my best buddies. So
yeah. Oh, Tavis. Bless your heart, sir.
That's funny. So I'd love to dive into specific songs from the debut album. Is that okay with you? I have specific questions about specific songs. Yeah, you gotta think back. So Going My Own Way. This is a slow burner. Are you a sucker for a good ballad like me? You got to tell me, Chris. That's what I want to know.
Absolutely. If I could get away with playing all ballads all night, I'd be the happiest person in the world. Sometimes I'll do like a solo acoustic thing at a restaurant, and you're just background music, and that's kind of my favorite thing to do. It's just, if I could sing ballads all day, I would. I love them. So
yes, Rod Stewart had a whole second career based on playing ballads. So you could do it too.
So there's still hope.
So the song Disco Blues, even though your style is more rock and blues, man, you have some heavy dance grooves on some of these songs. Are you a fan of dance music?
I like a good upbeat song. I think that was kind of our goal. And first it was like, we want to be radio heavy. Like we want this stuff to be played as a danceable track, not necessarily a dance song, but danceable. So we really went for that in the first record. And, I think it worked out pretty cool. Like that was Casey was always saying that, like, before we wrote Disco Blues, which isn't in the song at all. It's just kind of a nonsense excuse to riff, dance song. So we just called it Disco Blues. He was always calling the record, he's like, yeah, it's like disco blues. So that's kind of a term he coined.
So the song She's So Fine, there's this crazy guitar solo that's just like an explosion of energy. Do you remember coming up with that guitar solo? Anything you can tell us about it?
I don't really, to a certain extent, I just kind of play whatever I'm feeling at the time. So I don't really remember it like working it out or anything like that. But I think in those days I was a little more fiery. Now I think I'm getting more into my Mark Knopfler melodic days.
You do a cover of People Get Ready. So this song's been covered by Bob Dylan, Bob Marley, U2. How does this song end up on the album? You do lots of great covers. You cover Jimi Hendrix. You're in a cover band. Why this song specifically on the debut album?
It's just a song I've been doing for a long time, and I always loved it. I kind of took the Jeff Beck, Rod Stewart version. That was kind of the one that I based it on. And now, looking back, I listened to it the other day after Jeff Beck passed, and the chords are all wrong, which I didn't realize until a few months ago. But that song always kind of resonated to me, and it was just a nice cover to put on there, I think.
I mean, some might say you were playing the wrong chords, but others might say that you made it your own, you put a unique spin on it.
Well, yeah, I definitely like, in the past, I would use that excuse, and then now that I'm a little more educated in theory and stuff like that, now I'm more of a geek towards that way. Like it's nice to add little twists and turns here and there that are, and playing things proper makes a huge difference.
So you do a lot of great covers. What would you say are some of your all-time favorite songs to cover? Like if you have a cover gig and you look at the set list, are there 1, 2, 3 songs when you see them, you're like, oh yeah, man, can't wait to get to this one?
Well, it kind of changes all the time because, you do things over and over and over and over and over again. So, with Horseshack, I really like playing How Long by Ace these days. Probably my all-time favorite is Little Wing. I've never gotten sick of playing Little Wing ever in my life. Comfortably Numb's really fun.
That's my single favorite guitar solo of all time is Pink Floyd Comfortably Numb.
You have to play that first one exact. Like you can't just riff on that. That's always fun to do. What else? So our Sunday band, Chris Van Reed, we play at the Shore in Etobicoke, and I like to say that we're basically a vocal band, but we're too rock and roll to admit it. So it's like lots of songs that are just vocal heavy. I'm trying to think of, we're doing Too Much Time on My Hands by Styx, like an acoustic version. That's always fun to play. We do a cover of Blown Wide Open as well that I love singing that song. And yeah, there's tons, it always changes, and you get a new fresh song that you haven't done before and it works out right away. We've been doing It Falls Apart by The Odds, and I just love playing that. It's so much fun, like simple, effective. It's great, cool chords in it and stuff.
When I was young, I won a Styx prize pack, and it was a Styx album, a Styx t-shirt, and 2 tickets to Styx in Ottawa. And I was so young that I had heard of Styx, but I didn't think that I knew any of their music. So I go to the show, and it was amazing. It was Styx where Gowan is now with them, so you get Criminal Mind and all his his discography as well. But man, they were amazing live, and I became a fan. And every song they played, I would say, oh my God, I didn't know this was Styx. So it's like I knew all their music, but it's like I thought, this song was from this classic rock band and this song was from that one, and it was all Styx. So they made me a legit fan from when I won tickets and went to the concert. So.
Yeah, I remember, everybody goes right to Mr. Roboto, but like there's so many great songs. They have
Come Sail Away.
Many. And there's tons that are there. Yeah, I had the same thing when the producer of my last record and myself, Will, he's friends with the bus driver for Foreigner, and we went to see Foreigner in where was it? Anywhere north of Toronto, or in Kitchener, and it was unbelievable. Like the same sort of thing. Like I know all of these songs. Like you can sing along to every single one of the songs that they played, like 18 or whatever they did. It was so awesome. I love that when, you kind of pigeonhole a band to something, and then all of a sudden you actually immerse yourself. And it's like, oh, right. Oh, that song. Yes.
So while I was listening to your 2 solo albums, because they're very guitar driven, I was thinking, man, I think Big Wreck fans would love these 2 albums. Have you found that Big Wreck fans, do they seem to go back and because you're a member, go back and check out your solo stuff? Have you found that at all, that fans have talked to you about your solo stuff?
Yeah, to a certain extent. Like you mentioned the Facebook group. I think they've a few people have kind of posted my stuff, and you see bumps here and there. And yeah, it's nice. It seems to have like a steady, sort of really low. I always joke about when everybody gets their Spotify wrap up, it's like Big Wreck's like 2 million or something like that. I'm like, look out, guys, 117.
Nice. It's good to have some true fans,
Yeah, but it's it's been pretty good. I think some people dig in. Hopefully more.
Hopefully after this interview comes out.
Yeah.
So we have a fan question sent in. So some of them are a little ridiculous, and I decided to keep them because it's funny. So Emily Downer asks, boxers or briefs?
Boxer briefs.
Boxers or boxer briefs. You like the combo.
Yeah, the combo is the best. Can't be too free or too restricted.
I might as well.
I've known Emily since we were 2 years old.
Yeah, you expect nothing
She's
but ridiculous questions from her.
Yeah, I knew that was going to happen when I put it on my own wall.
Well, seeing as you handled that one well, I'll give you another ridiculous one. So this is from Emir Halilovic. That's the best I can say it. Halilovic. How do you maintain them curls in damp weather conditions like today on a stormy Monday?
My hair just kind of does its thing. I don't really do much to it. So, condition every couple days. That's about it.
There you go.
Humidity doesn't really affect it. Nothing really affects it that much. It's just
it's its own entity. It just is what it is.
Yeah. I haven't had a haircut in probably a good 8 or 9 years, and it just kind of stays. I don't think it really it's grown any longer anymore. So
it's funny, in the first year or two of the pandemic, nobody got a haircut, and you're like, yeah, join the team, man.
Yeah. Way ahead of you guys.
Yeah, welcome to the club. Yeah. So let's dive into the second solo album. So Tough Lung comes out in 2014. I found that there was a big shift in maturity in your vocal delivery. Did you find that in those 5 years that you had really developed as a vocalist?
Absolutely. It's something that I work on a lot because I do love it so much. And being with such a great singer, like when I'm touring with Colin James, it's unbelievable to hear him. And he kind of sings like all day long. And it's like, he's so calm with it. Like, I'm really trying to get, you don't have to be belting it out to really have that a nice timbre and sound really powerful. It's not that, if you watch a singer like Bonnie Raitt, she's barely moving her face and it's like the most powerful thing you've ever heard, So I try to get little tips and stuff. It's kind of funny. I was in the van with Colin on one of our like duo tours, and it's basically just me. At the time, it was just me and him in an SUV, and then the guys were in the truck ahead of us. So we're just driving around Canada, and I'm kind of picking his brain about stuff. And I'm like, so what kind of vocally, like, what kind of advice do you have? And he just he looks over and just goes, just listen to Stevie Wonder. Like, okay, yeah, but like anything else? He's like, no, just sing. So I try to, I try to read up on things and get little tips and stuff like that. And I'd say, yeah, probably because I joined Colin's band probably about 2009 as well, and really started really working on my vocals and stuff like that. Trying to be better, work on the range, and not lose my voice as much.
Yeah, man, Colin James has such an incredible voice. My dad is a huge Colin James fan, and me growing up, my dad would play his music all the time. My dad brought me to see him at Winterlude in Ottawa way back in the day. I think they put a stage on the ice or right beside the ice. I went to school for audio engineering, and I was in London, Ontario in 2014 in 2004. And I actually volunteered and I helped out at a Colin James show at a Blues Fest event. And so I have that experience, and we have a ton of fan questions sent in here, and 2 or 3 of them are asking questions about your time with Colin James. So you talked a little bit about Colin James when asking about your vocals and maturity. So I might as well just rattle off these Colin James questions while we're here,
sure.
and then we'll get back to the second solo album. So Hooten Brenda from the Big Rec fan group on Facebook asks, I would ask Chris how he keeps his performance schedule in check, playing for both Big Rec and Colin James and Sass and. So that's from Hooten.
Well, it's kind of the nature of being a Canadian musician, really. Like, I'm fortunate enough that I do have all those avenues, and when there's time off, like I can just pick up some cover gigs, and if need be, just go play solo acoustic sort of things. And a lot of just kind of fingers crossed. I try not to miss any Big Rec stuff. I did miss one earlier this year in Ottawa, and luckily Paulo's still around to cover me every once in a while.
That's the one show that I was at, and I miss you, but I know Paulo, so I was like, okay, well, it's a good trade-off.
Oh, Paulo's awesome. So we're really lucky that he can cover for me every once in a while, and I feel like it's tougher for me to sub out of the Big Rec stuff because it's very band and show oriented, and there's tons of intricacies that you can't just kind of fill in for. And so I guess Big Rec's kind of my priority, but if there's a month-long call-in tour and only one Big Rec show, something's got to give. I can't afford to not do that.
We have another question from Linda Zuber. How did he and Colin James meet, and what is his favorite song? So I don't know if what is his favorite song is what's your favorite Colin James song, or just your favorite song, period. So you can take that how you want. But how did you meet Colin James?
I actually met Colin in the van on the way to our first gig together. I got a call from his management about maybe 2 months before the gig, and they're like, "Are you available on this date?" Colin James, we were playing in Barrie. I was like, "Yeah, that's awesome. I'd love to do that. If you want to, send me a set list and let me know when rehearsals are." And like, I just hear on the other end of the line, they're just laughing, and they're, when the laughing stops, they're like, "There will be no rehearsal. There's probably not going to be a sound check, and we'll do our best to get you a song list." I was like, okay, that's kind of strange. And then I ended up getting an email of like 60 songs for like a 10-song set, but I got 60 songs. So, I really want to do a good job. So I learned all of them, and, worked my butt off for 2 months because I really wanted the gig. Like I didn't want to, do badly. This was like a really important thing for me. And then, on the day of the show, no sound check or anything. I was 2 rows back in the van. Colin gets in the front. He's just like, "Oh, you're Chris. How you doing, man?" I'm like, "Good." He's like, "Do you sing?" I'm like, yeah, I sing. And then he just starts into one of the songs that we didn't even end up doing it that night, I don't think. And, I sung along with it, and I was just kind of freaked out. Like the whole time I was like, here I am meeting Colin James, and he's asked me to sing within the first 20 seconds. and then we went on stage. Like there was no time. It was like not really a hang or anything like that. And it was pretty crazy. So that's how we met.
Okay. And what would you say is your favorite song?
My favorite Colin song?
Yeah, I don't know if that's the question. It was attached to how did you meet Colin, but what's your favorite song? I guess is just period. What's your favorite song?
My favorite song ever? Well, right now it's Brothers in Arms, Dire Straits. But if it's a favorite Colin song, I don't know if I really want to pick one, but the National Steel album is probably my favorite. I just love when he plays, steel guitar, like dobro stuff. It's unbelievable. He's so good at that sort of stuff. And the vocals are amazing too. So anything off of National Steel.
So we have a question from Russell Stewart. Do you use different gear playing with Big Rec compared to Colin James?
Absolutely. Totally different. Some of the same guitars, but I have a whole different pedal board for big rec because I'm using a Rev generator 120 with them right now, and I have one of those G2 switchers that changes the amp channels and stuff like that. It's way more complicated than the rig with Colin. I don't really use a lot of effects with Colin, so it's more of it's like my cover band board, which I basically built to be able to do any kind of cover song in the world and not be lost. It goes, I think I've got 5 different overdrives on it, little delay, that sort of stuff. But with the big rec, it's like, okay, I've got, HX effects. I've got a switcher, because I was trying to use just like a, just individual switching thing. And, you got to get from super clean with reverbs and delays to super heavy with nothing on it in one step of a button, or else you're just tap dancing the whole time and it's just too much. So the G2 gig rig things really saved me on that. So no, it's very different rigs.
Okay, so let's dive back into Tough Lung from 2014. Man, there's so many amazing guitar riffs. Do you have a hard drive or an app on your phone where there's just all these guitar riffs or guitar ideas that you can come back to when it's time to do some songwriting?
Oh yeah, that's basically how we did the. I just use the voice notes for the most part on my iPhone, and if I'm just riffing on something, and then I'd go over to Will's house. We wrote all the songs together, and just play him riffs, and he'd be like, "What's that?" It was at the time, like, he wouldn't really, I'd have like 40 or so ideas that I was kind of happy with, and after a while he kind of always picked the first one. Like, that would always, so before I went, I'd pick my favorite one, play him that one first, and then it ends up being a song like not long later. So yeah, that's basically how all the kind of songs started. Voice app, and then a stupid name over it, like A minor riff thingy to F or whatever, just so I wouldn't remember it.
A lot of your solo songs have slide guitar, so songs like Burn. For our listeners, anyone that's a guitarist that is just starting out, do you have any tips if they wanted to start playing slide guitar?
Yeah, find a slide that just feels comfortable to you. The pretty standard, like, brass slide or steel slide, or the pill bottle glass slide. They're good to start with, and then see what you kind of prefer. It's important to be muting with your right hand is a lot of slide, and just dragging your finger behind the slide as well. Or else it's just a noisy mess. You know what I mean? So those sort of things are really important. And watch Derek Trucks or Joey Landreth.
Man, Derek Trucks is so good. I took my dad for his birthday to see Eric Clapton with, I think, Robert Cray was opening. So Eric Clapton, and he had 2 amazing guitarists, and one of them, he had Derek Trucks with him on stage. Right, so Eric Clapton and Derek Trucks. So that got me a get out of jail free for life from my dad, for being a good son. So I was able to do, I got out of trouble quite frequently, and I could just reference the time I took him to that concert.
Yeah, you remember that time? Yeah. Doyle Bramhall is the other guitar player. I love Doyle Bramhall. He's one of my favorite guitar players of all time.
Does he play the other way, or
he's left-handed, but it's strong right-handed, so he plays kind of upside down.
So that's what I remember from the other guitarist, was that it was the other way. So we're talking about the same guy. Your song "There's No Comfort Here." So this is not just my favorite song from this album. It's my favorite song from any of your albums. I think that
Oh,
is
nice.
like, that is such an incredible song that I was playing it on repeat. So I listened to both albums completely, a few
Awesome.
times, but that one song, I was like, man, this is my jam. Can you share anything about that song, or the story behind it, or the inspiration for it?
Yeah, I, we did a lot of that record where, it wasn't, we'd have a sort of a specific thing, but we didn't want to get tied to a certain story. And I kind of like making up stories rather than being it too personal. But that one was very kind of just, okay, somebody's just down about not being able to be with the girl they want or the guy they want. And, just kind of letting them know. I think that was one of those, and it might have been the second or third song we wrote for the record. And yeah, I really like that song. That was one of my, yeah, I love playing dobro. It's kind of my favorite thing to do around the house. It's kind of what I gravitate to all the time. So
If the video game Guitar Hero approached you and said, we need just one of your songs from your solo career to feature in an upcoming Guitar Hero video game so that fans could play along to it, what song do you choose? I had a couple notes. I had going my own way has like a 3-minute solo,
right.
and She's So Fine has that crazy solo in it. So not to influence your answer, but those two, I was like, that would be cool to play.
I wonder how they would do it. I'm terrible at Guitar Hero. I'm one of the
Good at
worst ever.
guitar, terrible at Guitar Hero.
Terrible because it doesn't make any sense. Like in my head, I'm like, I know how that you play that. It's not red, blue, yellow, or whatever. It's like it's way different than that. So I don't know if I really have an educated guess to really pick one. I always like Through My Hands. I think that's a pretty good riff. So that one, I'll pick that one.
Cool. What's funny is in 100 interviews, if I'm interviewing a musician from a band where they do have some really cool guitar stuff, I'll ask the Guitar Hero question. And it's only happened once, when I was interviewing Dave, the drummer from Papa Roach. It's the only time where I've asked where they've actually had songs in Guitar Hero. So
Oh yeah,
it was kind of cool. But he was joking that, there was Guitar Hero and there was Rock Band. And he was joking that he wasn't even good at his own song that he's the
oh yeah,
drummer for in Rock Band. Just like you, as a great guitarist, you weren't great at Guitar Hero, to show that it's
oh
not
yeah.
exactly the same.
I couldn't do it, and I think and when I failed at the guitar part, what was it? I think it was Barracuda. It's like the first song. It's the easiest song of all of it. Like I couldn't even do the bass. Like I switched to bass afterwards. I was like, okay, I got to figure this out. And then it's just, I it's not my thing. It's not how my head works with music.
So I have two final solo questions, and we'll dive into Big Wreck. So you
Sure.
released a Christmas song in 2014 called "I Can't Have Christmas." Have you always wanted to release a Christmas song? I mean, if ever an artist can release a Christmas song and it becomes like a regular Christmas
Uh-huh.
staple, like the Mariah Carey example, she's made
Yeah.
$60 million over the years from
Yeah.
what is it? All I want for Christmas is you. Every
Yeah.
single year, if she never does anything again, just at Christmas, she makes another
Mm.
$3 million from that song. So that's the
Yeah.
pinnacle of having a Christmas hit. What's the story behind your Christmas song?
I guess that was just, everybody kind of chases that Christmas, carrot at some point, and that's what we came up with. I think it turned out pretty good. It's just about being on the road and not, musicians, we miss a lot of holidays and a lot of important things just because we're gone. And, it was just kind of a thinking about you at Christmas time sort of song. It's
So
not a hit though, so I don't get the $60 million.
not yet, not yet, but yeah. We're playing the long game here.
Yeah.
Final question. Your last solo album came out 9 years ago. Is there any
Yeah.
chance of a third solo album?
Absolutely. It's mostly done right now. I'm just trying to figure out a way to get it finished up. Like the pandemic really kind of squeezed a lot of funds out of me, and we did a bunch of stuff for it at the studio at Jukasa, and it was at a time, you know, in the pandemic where I hadn't been playing a lot, and it kind of had to scrap 90% of the guitars that I did there just because I wasn't in very good shape musically. And so I had to figure out, you know, get some gear and figure out how to record guitars in my apartment without making a ton of noise. And I got an aux box, and you know, had to learn. Like I'd never really done studio stuff at home other than GarageBand and stuff like that. So it's taken a long time, and I've, you know, kind of ran out of money. So hopefully can get something happening to just get us over the finish line. It just needs to be kind of mixed and mastered, and, you know, figure out how to release it, you know, in this kind of day and age. I don't, you know, I've put out records where it's just, you know, a Facebook post, like my last one, and, you know, it's not the best way to do it. So I really want to do it right, but it's also, it's taking a lot of time. But yeah, I'll put it out eventually. So maybe it'll just be one song at a time, and eventually have physical copy. But
so before we dive into Big Rec, I guess one final thing is I saw that you actually played bass for Fifi Dobson. There's a story here about having a strange audition. Is that true? Can you share that with our listeners?
Yeah, well, it was when I like just moved to Toronto, and you know, I'd been going to the jams and stuff like that, and there was a really good like revival jam that had a ton of like the best musicians at the time and singers and stuff like that. And I was terrified of it. I would never get up at that jam, but it was so I wasn't really doing a lot, and I'd heard about the audition because a friend of mine worked at the management company, and I just thought, well, I'll go rent a bass and, you know, give it a shot. I've never done an audition before, so, you know, why not? Why not give it a go? And I remember calling her up, and I'm like, hey, can I get into that audition tomorrow? Like, can you sign me up? And she's like, do you still have your hair? And I was like, yeah. She's like, I don't think that you're really what they want. And then we hang up, and then I go, all right, well, I'll call her back. And I'm like, you know what? Like, whatever. I've never done an audition before. So just give me this stupid CD and let me learn these songs and see what happens, you know? So I get there, I get a ride from another bass player that I knew who was auditioning as well. And it's like just at the old Rat Space on Geary. And it's just like 15 of like the best bass players in town, and me with this like little rental bass. And it was cutthroat. Like, you know, a guy goes in, I think it was like maybe 9th or 10th out of 16 or something like that. And, you know, somebody goes in, you hear the song going for like a verse, and then they stop it. Next, you hear the next person go in, maybe they get to the chorus, door opens, they're coming out, you know, and it's just everybody before me was just like 2 seconds, two
it's
seconds.
A slaughterhouse in there.
Oh yeah, it was really cutthroat. And I'm like, oh man, I'm like, what am I gonna do here? And then it was my turn, and I'm like, they're like, hey, we know you. You live with. They were friends. I was friends with Clifton David. He was my roommate at the time, and they're like, oh, you're Clifton's roommate. Blah blah blah. And I'm like, yeah. I just picked up this bass yesterday. You know, don't really play bass, but I just kind of, you know, see if you guys like it. And I ended up getting through the whole first song. I was like, what's going on here? Like nobody had, you know, everybody's kind of shocked. And I'm just like, okay. And they're like, well, do you know the second song? I'm like, yeah, well. And I got through the whole second song. And then they're like, okay, we want you to stick around and play with the drummer afterwards. It's like, wow, okay. And then go back into the hall, and everybody's looking at me like, who the hell is this fucking kid that just, you know, he's told everybody he picked up the bass yesterday, and he's sticking around. So I ended up, playing with the drummer Colin, and we went through the song a couple of times, and they're like, okay, well, we'll let you know what happens. And then at the time they ended up calling. It was our landline at home, and they're like, is Clifton there? I was like, yeah, okay, hang on. I go get him, and they're like, he gets off the phone and he's like, I just got asked to play bass for Fifi Dobson, because they're like, well, if this kid can do it, then so can Clifton. And I guess they wanted him involved because he was working with the producers on another thing. And then, a couple months later, I'm playing with another artist, and Fifi comes to the show, and she's looking for a bass player again. And she just says, I want that guy in my band. So after that, it was like, then I started playing bass. A couple of years of that. It was kind of a whirlwind sort of thing.
So you
After only a year being in Toronto,
you basically auditioned and got the spot for your roommate.
Yeah.
Has he taken you out for supper or
got,
something, like, to
yeah,
thank you?
no, he never did that, but yeah, but he always wanted to play guitar. He wasn't interested in playing the bass, and then one of the guitar players left, and then he switched to guitar, and they asked me to pick up the bass, which I was fine with. It was a really good experience for me musically, to really lock in with bass parts. And I did a lot of work just trying to think as a bass player, not just a guitar player playing bass. And I did gigs with a few people in town and stuff like that, and really wanted to, I wouldn't insult bass players and say that I'm a bass player, but I wanted to do a good job.
So let's dive into Big Wreck. I'm excited. I mean,
Yeah.
I've been following this journey with the 3 EPs. Every time an EP comes out, I dive into it. I did the interview with Sekou a few months ago, and
Right, yeah.
really got into everything with him. So I'm excited. I want to start with, do you remember the first time you became aware of Big Wreck, period? So just back in the day, had these hits, big albums. Do you remember the first time kind of experiencing Big Wreck just as a fan?
Yeah, like the Oath and Blown Wide Open and that song, when they all came out, I was very into it. It was me and my friend Wes Normington, who were childhood friends. He was also into it, and we were like, oh, this band is awesome. Like, if you heard it, and I bought everything they did after that, and I never really got to see them live. It was always one of those, like, it just didn't work out. I didn't have the means to kind of go see them when they were around, and I'm not sure if they were around kind of the Belleville area a lot. We could go to Kingston for bigger shows and stuff like that, but that was a bit of at the time, that was a big deal to go that far, even though it's like 45 minutes. It takes me longer to go to the store here in Toronto now. But yeah, I'd always just loved, the songs really got to me. It was like, I love that he was playing slide on like really heavy sort of stuff. And, the riffs and everything, I just really gravitated towards. So, and then I ended up meeting him, probably 2004, 2005, maybe, at the Orbit Room. And we just kind of hit it off. We were just, just laughing about stuff. And, he's this sports fan. We're just talking gear and, just basically shooting the shit most of the time. And the other guys in Stifler's Mom were in Thornley at the time too. So I'd go and see them all the time. We were at most of those shows. And yeah, it's always been, they've been a big part of my life, really, since the beginning.
I saw that even way back in 2015, that when Ian had his solo albums, that you were opening for him acoustic at the Mod Club. So even I was going to say, oh, you go all the way back to 2015, and you're telling me actually all the way back in 2004 or whatever, he was at the Orbit Room.
Yeah, and it was I did end up joining Thornley for a little while there, and we'd only done a couple of gigs, and then I knew that Paulo had ended up quitting a band that he was with, and I kind of knew as soon as I heard that he was the right guy for Thornley at the time. I was like, very bluesy, not really technical, kind of behind. Like it was going to take me a lot to really do a good job with the Thornley stuff. And as soon as I heard Paulo was around, that was about 2010. It was like, yeah, Paulo's the guy. And Ian just kind of called me. He's like, yeah, I think we're going to go with Paulo. I was like, I understand, because I had also just joined Colin's band. Colin had a 2 month tour, January, February, and that was clashing already. So it was like it was kind of the right time to do that. And then we'd always, and there's never any hard feelings. It's kind of like the family around Thornley and Big Wreck is always tight. There's not everybody's a brother or sister or whatever. So it's like we always remain friends. So we'd still hang out. And when he was doing his solo stuff, he's like, well, you just put out a record, like, why don't you just come and open for us? It was like, oh, that'd be awesome. And then I just kind of played along with them after that. So I'd open the show and then just do some acoustic stuff or a little spacey sort of things in the background and just fill it out, because they were just a 3-piece. And yeah, we had a lot of fun. That was a great tour.
So do you know Big Wreck drummer Sekou from the Thornley days as well?
Yeah, like I've known Sekou as long as Ian, really. Like when I first kind of moved to Toronto, Sekou was one of the main guys,
he was with Cardinal back in the day, and Serena
yeah,
Ryder, and
and we all, we do. I think he was playing with the A Team every once in a while at the Orbit Room, and a bunch of other things. I would see him at the Revival Jam every once in a while, and he's just a heavy drummer. He always has been. So I've known him for a long time.
It's so looking
kind of met everybody.
Yeah. So looking at the current Big Wreck lineup, it looks like it's just these amazing musicians that have known each other forever and are good friends. Is that a fair assessment?
I've known Dave for just as long as well. That he would play with Stifler's mom every once in a while, and I knew Dave long before he joined the band. And then when I heard that he was joining the band, I was like, oh, that's perfect. Like, that's a great call. And Chuck as well. Like I've known Chuck for just as long, and Chuck was actually on the gig that Fifi came to see us play, and then she picked me out of that band and took me on the road for a couple of years. But yeah, it's everybody kind of knows everybody. We've been friends. I think that's kind of the main reason why I got asked when I did. It was a tough time for them, and you want a friend around, and I hope that they knew that I would step up to the plate, do a good job.
So you joined the band in 2019, and did you have to audition for them, or they just knew you for so long that they knew when asking you that you were the right guy?
Essentially, yeah. I don't know if they had any other guys in mind. It was early 2019, and they Ian kind of called me out of the blue, and we went for lunch. I thought it was just kind of catch up because we hadn't seen each other in a while, and he told me that Brian was really sick and that he couldn't do the next tour that they were going to be on at the end of the year because he was going to be going through some intense like chemo and stuff like that. And so I was just like, yeah, I'll help you guys out. I'm free for the tour. I'll, come prepared, and, let's do this. Hopefully Brian can get back. And then, early in the summer, Brian passed away, and it was really kind of an odd time, I guess, for me, but also for the band. What a thing to go through, losing a friend and a great musician at the same time. So we were about halfway through the tour, and I think we were playing catch in a parking lot somewhere in the States, and Ian just kind of looked at me. He's like, "You got to join the band." I was like, because I was still sort of, just filling in, just and, it's like, "Come on, you got to join the band." I was like, "Okay, yeah, I should join the band."
Were you nervous at all joining a band that was already multi-platinum and successful, or were you more excited than anything knowing you're the right guy for the job?
uh, I yeah, I'm kind of nervous in the fact that the internet has opinions on things, and it's not always fun to read stuff. But everybody's been really supportive, so I guess I was afraid of that. But everybody's been really cool about it, and it's everything's been really positive, I think. And but no, I don't really get nervous about stuff like that anymore. I've played on lots of big stages, so I get nervous if I'm not prepared. That's when I get nervous, but I try not to ever let that happen.
What would you say is the biggest challenge in joining a band that's already established, like a Big Wreck?
Well, just it's like I don't want to be too uh here's my stamp on this stuff. I don't think that's the right thing to do. I like to look at old YouTube videos of Brian's playing, and pick up little things that it's like, oh, that's cool, I like what he's doing there. I'll do that now. And I I just want to do a good job. As a fan of the band myself, it's like, okay, I don't want to be the weak link here. So it's been a lot of, I've had to change my practicing techniques, and change up little things here and there, and loosen up and tighten up. And there's lots of technical things that I've had to learn, and get better at, which has kind of been great, because at what was that, 38, just you gotta, sometimes you need a little kick in the pants to get better, especially after so long playing, and being successful, and sort of bluesy rock sort of stuff. And then okay, well, now do the really tough stuff. It's like Big Wreck songs are, it's kind of like the hardest song you've ever had to learn, but every single one is like that. It's like Bohemian Rhapsody every time. It never does really the same thing twice. So,
And this whole discography with all these songs going back for decades.
yeah, I'm digging more into that now. Like, when I first joined, it was basically learn the set and a couple of audibles here and there, but yeah, and that was enough for me to have on my plate, sort of thing. And like I was saying before, the switching of the pedals and certain, it's a lot of like, the verse needs pickup selector 2, it needs clean with delay, and this specific delay, and a little bit of reverb on it, and then it's got to go to heavy with the bridge pickup only. And there's a lot of, oh, and then I got to sing, and it's like, okay, like there's so many things to do and to remember for each song, that it's taken a lot. But now I'm starting to get it under my hands, and it's starting to feel more comfortable, that I can dig into more older songs, and you can have a bit more of a repertoire going on.
So you joined the band in 2019, and then in 2020, there's this global pandemic. Did it feel like a cruel joke from the rock and roll gods? At first, it giveth this opportunity, and then it taketh away just as quickly.
Well, I don't think so, because we never really thought about it like that, until we were into it. And then it was like we had just done like a 3 months tour to the end of 2019. So I knew there wasn't going to be a whole lot going on for a while. And then I was out with Colin for, I think it was supposed to be a good month. And then we just got sent home. And, at the time, you didn't really realize until, a couple months later, it's like, okay, this is going to be a while. And then, we did, they were good about getting creative, and we did some drive-in gigs and the live stream stuff, which was terrible. I hate doing like full band sort of live stream stuff, even though I said I'd like to do the whole band with the Caddell show thing, but it's just so, that would be with an audience. Like, just live streaming with no audience, it was just so bizarre that, there's no real way to give a good performance that way. So, and, the sound is never the way it should be. But I guess I never really thought about it really that way. And then, and the next thing you know, it's 2 years later.
Yeah. You guys have found a way to stay busy. Do you find that on the recent tours that crowds are basically back to what they were before? Or do you find that, maybe people still have a certain amount of fear and they're not going out, so the crowds aren't quite as big? Or are the crowds bigger than ever because everyone's been cooped up for 2-3 years and they just want to get out there and be social?
I guess like last year, it felt like too many people were trying to kind of cash in on everybody coming back. And I think there was just too many festivals and too many things going on. I heard Rabs talking about this with you as well. And it was just like, you see these new festivals kind of come along, and there's the exact same festivals just down the street, like a couple weeks later. And I think people got kind of exhausted too much, and plus all of the rescheduled stuff is going on too. It was just too much going on, I think, last year. I think this year, hopefully it just settles down to where it was. But I think for the most part, everybody's back to normal. This is, as good as it gets. So hopefully it's not like too much of a overload of stuff to do anymore, I guess.
Yeah, all these musicians and bands were telling me how difficult it was to tour at certain points over the last few years, because you had a period where nobody could play live, which is the main income stream for musicians. So suddenly every musician and band in the world was on tour at the same time when things opened up again. So it's like all the venues were booked. You couldn't book the shows you wanted. All the rental equipment was rented out. You couldn't find the equipment you wanted. The rental vans are gone, or they're charging $10,000 for this, and all the flights are delayed. Like, apparently it was just a nightmare for a while to tour, is what I was reading.
Yeah. And, costs of hotels were crazy, and
gas
prices are nuts. And, buses were hard to find too. And, I'm lucky that I don't have to deal with that side of things.
That's why.
Tell me when I'm leaving and tell me when I'm coming home.
That's why you have a tour manager and a stage manager and all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And on that note, I have some kind words sent in from someone here who. So Bruce Nickel, who I know as the bass player in Idle Sons back in the day, and he's gone on to be an amazing. He does. He tour manages and stage manages and guitar tech and bass tech and all those things. So I believe with you guys, he came back as a guitar tech during the pandemic for a bit with you and with Ian. So I'm actually going to see him tomorrow night. He's in Ottawa, Theory of a Dead Man. So I'll be nice. I'll be hanging out with him.
Tell him I say hello and bring him an Arby's burger.
He loves that. I'll sneak one in my jacket. What's funny is the other day, not far from here, I drove by an Arby's. I'm like, I didn't know Arby's even still existed. So I know where there is one. So
he got me to try it. I'd never tried it. And I'm like, my joke has always been like, I don't know anybody who likes Arby's. Like, how do they stay in business?
It's like never roast beef with liquid cheese. Like, it's strange.
Like I've never heard anybody in my life be like, you know what I could go for right now? Arby's. Never. And then Bruce is just like, I love Arby's, man. Like, what?
Yeah, I think the podcast Arby's sponsorship is not going to come through anytime soon after this episode.
But it was good. We went there. It was good.
Yeah. So this is what Bruce has to say. He says, Chris is more than a great guitar player. He's a fantastic one. More than a great musician. His jazz piano is unequaled. He is a fantastic human, period. He's easily one of the funniest people I've ever worked with. A great person to have on the road and a great person to have around for any occasion. Top notch all the way. So that's from Bruce Nickel.
Right back at you, Bruce. God bless him. He's the best.
Did the period of lockdowns over the last 2 years, did that make you really appreciate all the shows you've been doing since then? You know, maybe it's like we take it for granted. Oh, we're always on the road and I'm tired of all these shows. And then suddenly there was a period in time where musicians didn't know if they would ever play live again. Like there was this uncertainty for a while. Like I went and saw Billy Talent live, and the singer Ben basically was crying at one point saying, I thought at some point maybe I would never see any of your faces again on a live stage. So did that make you appreciate when you do play live now that like, wow, we almost lost this, or we did for a bit?
I don't really think that I ever thought that it'd never happen again, but it definitely, when we first started playing in front of like real audiences, it was like, oh yeah, I really miss this. It's the way to go. You know, it beats the hell out of live streams. I just hate them so much. Just for that, like, you know, like when we did our little show, it was like, you know, we wanted to make it interesting and do some fun stuff. And, you know, we had a drinking game going on and stuff like that. It was just like, you know, just a good hang. But when you're trying to put on a performance, you know, to nobody, it's really bizarre. It's really, really weird. You know, you finish a song and you get nothing back. Like, not just like a couple of claps or a dead audience. You get nothing back. It's so weird. So, you know, once, you know, we got back into a, you know, full crowd going crazy, that it was, you know, I'm definitely emotional. I don't think I cried or anything. I'm not like, just not really much of a crier, but
yeah. Well, even at the drive-in shows, you could get a honk or two here or there, you know.
Yeah, it was kind of funny because like the first drive-in ones, everybody had to stay in their cars, and that was kind of cool. It was like everybody's flashing their lights and honking horns, and you know, it was like, this is kind of awesome. And then the later on ones, you were supposed to stay in your car, but you know, rules had kind of loosened a bit, so everybody kind of stood in front of their hoods, sort of thing. And then it was weird because it just sounded like a dead audience. Like there was no more honking and flashing lights. It was just like, you know, it looked just like a poorly attended concert. So that was kind of weird. But the first ones, it was kind of cool. I was like, dare I say I like this? You know? Yeah, it was cool.
So let's dive into the 3 EPs with Big Rec. So we mentioned already that 15 songs were recorded upfront starting in 2020. Instead of releasing a 15-song album, you decided to release 3 EPs with 5 songs each. They all came out over the last few years, and now the full, like, you can check out the 3 EPs, or there's the full 15-song album just called 7 that's available. So we've seen the finish line. It's all out. Let's talk about 7.1, about the first EP. So my favorite songs are Fields and Bombs Away, just happen to be the 2 singles. But yeah, you know, so what I would say is you guys pick 2 good singles off of that album. The song Fields. So there's a great chorus with amazing harmonies. When you play live, you're singing harmonies. Do harmonies have they always come easy to you, or is it something that you've had to work on to write harmonies, but also to hear harmonies?
For me personally, it's been like, that was the point of our cover bands, was to work on harmonies. And it's something that somewhat comes naturally to me. I'm good with like the obvious harmony, and then if I have to do something like a secondary harmony that's a little weird and has the odd different note to it, I need a little help with that. But it's definitely different with the Big Rec stuff. There's a lot of nothing is regular with Big Rec stuff. There's nothing that's, you would never hear. Pretty much, I think there's only one song where it's just a regular campfire chord going on it. It's never like that. It's not just a D. It's a D that you play on the 7th fret, and you're like, what? you know. So I guess sort of. I guess at the end of all that, long story long, sort of comes naturally, but I definitely have to work on it.
So the song "High on the Hog" has all these badass guitar riffs, and there's really tasty bass playing, especially in the last minute. There's almost like a bass solo going on. What would you say that Dave McMillan brings to the table as a bass player? What is his, I mean, he's a great bass player, but what do you say are his gifts, his main gifts that he brings?
Well, Dave is really great at, he can shred, on a bass, but he really knows when to do that and when not to do that. And his groove is awesome. He when him and Sekou really dig into a groove and are playing together, it's fun for me because I'm kind of that guy too. Like I feel like I'm part of the rhythm section, so that when we're doing something like Ghosts, and it's just simple sort of stuff, but like to have a good groove is super important. So Ian can go off on a spaceship into wherever he wants to go, and we'll just keep it together behind him, sort of thing. So Dave is super tasty, and he's one of those guys that and I mean this in a great way, you don't really know how much he's doing until you actually watch him. And then when you actually like zone in on the bass, you're like, that's what you're doing. It's like, holy crap. Like, it doesn't feel, if he's doing something really complicated and busy, it doesn't feel like that. It feels just like groove. And it's and he's really good at never being out of place. I don't rarely ever hear him make mistakes or anything. He's always solid Dave.
The song "Bombs Away" is the band's most popular song from the 3 EPs on Spotify. There's 572,000 plays. Why do you think people love that song so much?
I think it's that riff. It's so cool, and the dissonant, that dissonant sort of off the top into a rick-a-doot. I think it just grabs people. It's one of the funnest songs to play. I love playing.
Because there's the two guitars harmonizing, right? Like there's a solo where it's like two guitars harmonizing. Is that something you guys pull off live?
No, we don't. I don't really do that. It's kind of one of those things where if the rhythm guitar kind of drops, it gets really empty in there. So, I just let him do his thing. I feel like he does it on his own.
Yeah,
like I think he does the harmonizing just him.
He's not human.
He's not. He's an alien. He's definitely unbelievable with that sort of stuff, especially his own songs. He's super talented.
So the song Beano is in a different time signature. I believe it's maybe in 7/4 or something. Is it more challenging to play songs in different time signatures, or is it all the same to you? You just find the groove and you're good.
I'm definitely just find the groove and I'm good, but I think that's just in 4. I don't think there's anything crazy about it. Yeah.
It doesn't it repeat, like after 7 it repeats again? No? Maybe I'm mixing up songs, but
maybe it isn't 7.
Like it's such a smooth transition that you can't.
Yeah, no,
you don't even notice.
Yeah, I think it's. Yeah, I've never really. I don't like to cloud my mind a lot with stuff. I just like to find the groove and figure it out. I know that in I think it's Wolves, there's a bar of 3 or something like that. I just call it the weird part.
That's all good. I have a fan question, and then we'll dive into EP 7.2. So question is from Tony Kennedy from the Big Wreck fan group on Facebook. He says, I'd ask if Ian's style of guitar playing and his songwriting has influenced Chris's playing since joining Big Wreck. And when is he releasing an album of his superb dressing room piano and voice interpretations of yacht rock classics? There's inside jokes going on here.
Yeah, I started just as a joke uh claiming that I can play piano, and I just do it really confidently, and I don't know how to play piano at all. But for some reason I can sing in key over top of the chaos, which I think is just kind of funny in the joke. And the guys started to get me to doing it like backstage whenever there's a piano. It's like, hey, Chris, just go play a song. Do like, you don't know me, but I'm your brother. It's just chaos on the piano underneath. But I try to get the rhythm to it. Anyway, it's pretty funny. It's sort of stupid joke that I kind of like doing, but I'll never release it as a record. No. As for Ian's influence, absolutely, it's huge. Like, to, you know, get lessons from one of the best guitar players in the world is, you know, awesome for me. And, you know, if like I was saying before, I've had to change some things about my style of playing, and, you know, being conscious of tones and, you know, things down to what pickups to use at what times, and, you know, what pedals work for this and what pedals don't. And, you know, he's very big on, you know, certain guitars for certain songs too. Like, you know, there's a ton of different tunings that we have, but like, there's also, it's like, okay, this is more of a Les Paul song. It's more of a, you know, a sewer song, or, you know, that sort of thing. It's, I feel like we're fairly similar in our style, where like, you know, you know, we have similar tastes, like, you know, Mark Knopfler and, you know, Ry Cooder, you know, and then kind of into the heavier stuff. He's way better than me at that sort of thing. And, you know, he's really been patient to help me along with a lot of that stuff. And, you know, it's just like, you know, figuring stuff out and making sure it's right. So it is absolutely, I think he's really like cleaned up by playing. You know, I've always kind of just been a basher, and, you know, not really conscious of my right hand and gripping a little too hard with the left, and, you know, trying to get that stuff down and really clean up has kind of been a big thing. And he's been a huge part of that. So very thankful.
What do you think makes Ian Thornley such a great front man? And then with his guitar playing, I mean, there's lots of great guitarists. Like, you're a great guitarist, but people talk about him like he's the best guitarist period in Canada, or one of the greatest of all time. Like, there's this aura to do with him and his guitar playing. So as a front man, what makes him special? And then as a guitarist, with all the greatness that's out there on guitar, what is it about him that just puts him in some other stratosphere?
Well, the frontman thing, I think it's because it's, you know, it's his songs. He's the, you know, primary writer on everything. And he hasn't really, you know, I'm sure he's like, you know, learned riffs and covers and stuff like that and influenced by people. But I think most of his life is just coming up with riffs and playing his own songs. And, you know, they're really great pieces of music. And, you know, he really believes it. He's, you know, it's the lyrics are his, the riffs are his. And it's, you know, I think that's when somebody's really passionate about, you know, what they've written and what they play. That's what makes a good frontman, whether you're doing jumping jacks or backflips, or you're just kind of standing there. I think it's a conviction thing for front people mostly, you know, and, you know, you can tell when somebody's faking it, and he's definitely not doing that. But as for his guitar playing, I just think he's got everything. Like, you know, he plays with his hands as well as he plays with a pick. Like, he can play a million notes a minute, or he can just bend you to tears. You know, like, he's got everything. Like, you know, there's no part of his playing that is a weakness. And then, you know, he pulls out a slide and he's like, I don't even practice this. And it's unbelievable. Like, and it's so definably him, you know, it's not like, oh, you're just doing Derek Truxliff's Rick, riffs. It's just, oh, that's Ian. Like, you can't really. He's very himself. You know what I mean? You can kind of pick him out of a crowd of people easily.
So the second EP, so 7.2, comes out in 2022. My favorite songs are Better Off and Fear and Cowardice. So Better Off has all these amazing guitar riffs in the middle of the song. Of the 3 EPs, which song elicits the most air guitar from crowds? Do you ever look out and people are just air guitaring to anything?
I
Or
keep my
head
head down.
banging the most, or is there something that
I keep
just
my head down a lot. I would say Bombs Away gets the most head banging.
okay?
Uh, yeah, Better Off is one of those songs I really got to kind of concentrate. So I'm not really looking. Yeah, that's kind of a tough one to play, especially the chorus. There's a really high part, and then I have to sing on top of it. So I'm very concentrated at that point. So I don't really look out for that. But yeah, I probably Bombs Away for air guitar, I would suppose.
So fear and cowardice is, man, that is an awesome song. And Sekou posted a live video from the drum cam, and it's amazing to see what he's playing. There's such like a heavy, swampy groove. What is it like playing with Sekou every night with the Big Rex stuff? What a monster drummer.
Yeah, like I was saying that about him too. I was a few months ago, and I'd been catching up on his YouTube videos from behind the kit and stuff like that. And I was like, Sekou, you're like the busiest drummer I've ever played with, but it never feels like that. Like it doesn't, you watch his videos and there's not a verse or anything that goes by that he's not adding a little something. And he's got a million drums and cymbals and toys and, things to do. And he does something kind of every time, but he never loses the groove. It's really amazing. And he's such a, heavy hitter, and, another guy who never messes up. So it's awesome to play with him. Playing with those guys, it's definitely I feel like the little brother catching up sort of thing, all these, heavy, really well educated musically people. That's it's been a big challenge, but it's good.
So just a few weeks ago, you guys released the third and final EP, 7.3, the singles Melody and Sound. I guess because we're already talking about Sekou, the song Fall Over has this killer snare sound to it. It's like there's something about the snare specifically on that song. Do you remember anything like standing out in the studio at all? Like the drums sound great on all 15 songs, but there's like an extra amount of reverb on that snare, or he's hitting it hard. There's something going on in Fall Over with the drums. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't remember there being anything crazy. I know there were a ton of different snares to kind of go through. But
maybe
no,
had a Red
really
Bull before recording that snare.
Yeah, I'm not sure. They do it. It's really cool to watch. Ian's a big influence on drum sounds too, and watching them and listening to what they say about getting sounds and how to do things. It's really cool. It's kind of limitless. It'd be tough to pinpoint what that actually was for me anyway.
So
that'd be more of an Ian question. He'd know.
I'll give him a call.
Yeah.
So the song Full Display, to me, it sounds like a 12-string guitar is featured, at least in the ending of the song. It seems to be pretty prominent. Are you a fan of 12 strings guitar? Like what 12-string guitar is is there like a specific time that's best to bring out a 12-string in a song? Like I just don't know.
Actually the main riff is 12 string. I think it's 2 12 strings that he used. We didn't do that live just because I don't know if we have enough, or it would just seem to sound better when one was kind of a little bit tighter, not in a studio setting where you can do it perfectly every time. It's kind of fascinating. Ian uses the 12 string a lot. Like he'll, I think he was using it for 3 or 4 songs on the last little run we did. And, he really uses it in his own way. It's not, everybody, I kind of think of, God rest his soul now, Gordon Lightfoot. Like, I just think that what I think of when I think 12 string, and then you hear Ian do it and it's like, oh, I didn't even know it could do that. Like, who would even, think for that sort of thing? So yeah, it's his use of 12 string is really cool. I love using it. It's kind of when you put a 12 string through a huge heavy 2-4-12 rig set to stun, it's like, whoa, they have a distortion sort of in their own tone, and then you put it through stuff and it's like, wow.
Yeah, 12 really strings have like this orchestral sound to them.
Yeah, which almost sounds kind of distorted, but yeah, like I say, it's kind of orchestral, which is kind of neat when you put that through something so heavy.
So the single melody and sound, the opening riff, there's this clean guitar with like a little delay or something. To me, that's the Big Wreck sound. Like if you go all the way back to the first big singles on the debut album, it's hard to explain, but there's this sound that only Big Wreck has. It's clean, like clean notes with like a little delay on it or a little reverb. Do you know what makes that sound? Is that a pedal? Is it a way of playing?
It's definitely just a way of playing for the most part. But I mean, I'm sure there's obviously some delays and probably a bit of reverb or something like that on it. Yeah, I think that one's in Dadgad. Like it's a lot. I think that Big Wreck sort of sound is the use of open tunings, and like I said, nothing's a regular chord. Like if you figure out a song of theirs and you're playing regular chords, you're likely wrong. It's always somewhere different. That riff starts, I think it's on the 12th fret, and it's like a and it's just like open strings that if you just strummed it straight, it would have a totally different vibe than the way he kind of picks it, like that's kind of the coolness of Big Wreck, I think. And I think Brian was a big influence on that too, where I think they would sit around and be like, okay, well, this song is just D and A, but what are some different ways of playing D and A? And they figure that out, and it's super cool. Like it's like anything, and you just switch it up a little bit, and it sounds like totally different chords,
So you guys have an upcoming tour in June across the US. There's a couple of Canadian dates for festivals. What can the Big Wreck fans expect if they come out to see you on this upcoming tour? Can you give any preview? I don't know.
Yeah, well, I would imagine we'll be doing pretty much the same set that we did for that last little run of Ontario dates, which was, what I do like about it is that we don't, more Ian than myself, he doesn't want to just be doing the old stuff all the time. It's like the new stuff is really what we all kind of want to focus on and do some different things. And, we had, since Sekou had joined the band, we had kind of been doing a lot of the same songs. So it's been cool to kind of switch it up and add a lot of the new record and some different, older songs that were, popular and stuff like that. So it's, it'll be different than it has been in the last couple of years, I suppose. A bit more deep dives, and, it's a good rocking show. I really enjoyed the set that we did in the last Ontario run. So it's fun. It will be fun.
we guarantee some fun. That's the guarantee. You get some great music and lots of fun. So as we wrap up, I have some kind words sent in. This is the final quote. And
Uh-oh.
this is the quote to end all quotes, because this is this is from Dan Preston, who's one of the,
Danos.
well, great guitarists, Clark Nova, all that stuff. But he's gone on to be one of the top live audio engineers on the planet.
Yeah.
He's out on tour with Saint Asonia right now with Tavis, and they were just in Ottawa. So Dan is super busy, but I was able to get this out of him. Three words: Chris fucking rules. That's what I got out of Dan Preston. So there you go.
All right, back at you, Danos the Manos. He's the best. God bless him.
That's too funny. Yeah. He wanted to submit a quote, and at the end of the day, he's like, "Man, I'm so busy. Like, here, this is what I got." So
that's great.
But that means a lot from him. So
yeah, absolutely.
So I have just a few more questions. These are kind of the deeper questions. When you look back at your life and career, what are you most proud of, and what are you most grateful for?
Probably I feel like, being, respected by fellow musicians is kind of what I'm most proud of. That's all I ever really wanted to do, is just make a living at music, and have people refer me confidently, and and be able to do a good job. And I feel like I've done that in every sort of situation that I've been put in, and hopefully that continues.
Do you have any dreams still in your heart that you have yet to accomplish or attain, that you're working towards? You've had all this success. Is there still stuff kind of on the bucket list that you're working towards?
I don't know. I've been asked this question before, and I feel kind of stupid that I don't really.
You're just enjoying the moment and the current successes.
Like as a kid, when I was, when I didn't go to college, I was just like, I just want to make a living playing music. And, that happened pretty quick. And then, that like I wouldn't have ever dreamed that I'd end up playing in Big Rec or with Colin James or, Sass Jordan and stuff like that. It's just, it's kind of surreal for the most part. I mean, like, where else do you go? Like, we travel around in a tour bus. You get great techs like Bruce, setting up my stuff every day and changing the strings. And, I've traveled all over Canada and most of Europe. Yeah. I guess see more places in the world.
Life is good.
Like I don't know. It sounds stupid. And, if you watch like a Tony Robbins thing, he'd probably like, you're failing at life. But, I just like I've always wanted to do is I just want to be really good, and I want to do stuff that I love. And I've managed to do that. Like I don't have anything that I don't like to go and show up for. All the cover band stuff and gigs that I have are tons of fun and with great people. And, I've been very lucky. So knock on wood.
You've done that a few times.
I haven't played the Scotiabank Arena yet. So I'd like to do that. Okay.
There we go. There's one. So we have a tradition on the podcast where we have the current guest leave a question for the next guest without knowing who it is, age, male, female, profession. And we have a question from the last guest. So this is from Maya Wynn, who's the singer of the supergroup Envy of None. So that's Alex Lifeson of Rush, his supergroup with Andy Kern of Coney Hatch and recording engineer Alpha Annabellini. So Maya asks, have you arrived at where you wanted to be? So you kind of touched on that a little bit in the last.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I did. I've never really wanted to be a rock star per se. And, I've seen what it's like for some of those guys, and it's not always peachy. And I kind of like where I am. I feel like I'm somewhat sought after musician for a lot of different things, and that's kind of what my goal has always been. So yeah, I guess so.
So can you now pay it forward and provide a question that I can ask the next guest? And I'm going to break the rules for the first time in 100 episodes here. Normally, I never let the guests know who they're leaving a question for. But the next guest is Bruce Nichols making his triumphant return for our new series. So I have the most popular musical guest return, and it's called My 5 Favorite Albums. So we just nerd out for 2 hours on his 5 favorite albums of all time. So he's coming back, and just because he provided a quote for you and you guys are friends, and I think it's funny, I will let you know that it's Bruce Nichols next, so that you can, cater your question to him, because I think that's amusing.
I have to say it now?
Yeah.
I had a different question.
Okay, well, I mean, we could pretend you don't know who it is, and whatever you want to do. It can be fun or silly or stupid or.
Yeah, just ask him who his favorite Arby's date is, other than his wife, of course. And that'll be the joke question. And then if he could swap positions, tech or musician, with anybody, who would it be?
Tech or musician. Perfect. Awesome. So
I better be his favorite Arby's date.
Yeah. You might have set it up for embarrassment here when he named somebody else. What's funny is if I bring him a sandwich from Arby's tomorrow, he might say that I'm his favorite Arby's date, but we'll see. So final question. If you could go back in time and you could sit down next to your 10-year-old self, and you could use all the wisdom you've learned since then, your mentorship and lessons and experience and triumphs and failures, if you could distill everything down to, some words of advice for cute little Chris sitting there beside you to help guide him along this human experience through his life, what words of advice would you provide?
Probably, well, I guess it wouldn't be 10-year-old, because all I cared about was playing hockey at that time. But if I was to go back to when I started being a musician, I'd say start singing and really learn how to do it earlier. I actually had a young guitar player come up and be like, "What's some guitar playing advice you can give me?" And I said, "Sing," and he hated it. But I think that's great advice. Like, if you're a guitar player, you'll be asked to play way more gigs if you're really looking to sideman, and you can fill up your calendar way more if you sing. So I would do that. And probably 10-year-old Chris, I'd say expand what music you listen to, and because you can be influenced by anything. Because I was really stuck on blues at the time. I think I wasted a lot of years doing that.
So there's some great advice. So as we wrap up, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge you for your lifelong pursuit of mastery as a singer-songwriter and as a guitarist. I want to commend you for dreaming big, having a vision of the future where you could be a successful full-time musician, and you actually pursued that and followed it through to fruition. And you are where you are now with Big Rec and with your solo career. I want to say thank you as a fan of music for the great music that you've put out with all the projects you've been involved with. And last but not least, I just want to say thank you for this interview, for sitting down with me for the last 2+ hours, allowing me as a Big Rec fan to pick your brain. These are questions I wanted to know the answers to for a very long time. So thank you so much, Chris. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Joel. This has been a pleasure.
You're very welcome. So to the podcast listeners, to the Chris fans, to the Wreckage fans, to the Big Rec fans, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode. If you've enjoyed today's episode of the podcast, please take a moment to subscribe, like, comment, and share. What I want to know is, who would you like me to sit down with next for a 2-hour deep dive interview? You can let me know by reaching out to me on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Joel Martin Mastery. Joel is Joel. And you can find me on Twitter and Snapchat at Joel Mastery. So I am done. I am complete. I approve this message, and I'll see you on the next episode.